Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Friend Code. I'm your host, Michael Damiani. This week, I'm joined by Brad Ellis.
Achievements.
Achievements. Achievements are coming. Maybe.
Never.
Yeah, there you go. I was waiting for that. Never. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Doing well. Finally, as this episode title probably clued you into, I had some time to play some Skyward Sword over the last week. I know you've been playing it on stream.
Yeah. Yep.
But Skyward Sword HD just came out, and it's interesting because I feel like because I'm just starting Skyward Sword, I feel like I'm starting to fall behind on even like Nintendo games because what else just came out was Pokemon Unite. And now I saw news today about a live-action Pokemon Netflix, and it's like sometimes I feel it comes in waves where there's like nothing with Nintendo, and it's like I can't keep up, like slow. And there's even a lot of news. It's just Pokemon Unite was a game I had written off, but after hearing people talk about it and seeing the reaction on social media, and we're gonna be playing it on group stream, obviously, so I'm waiting for that experience. I feel like maybe I bet on the wrong horse there. I was like, maybe I should have been playing this. It's like I don't know. I don't know if you feel any like FOMO or something with Pokemon Unite, or are you just like cool? You're not playing it.
I usually don't feel any FOMO with Pokemon, except maybe on a new big mainline one. But I've seen some of it. I mean, it looks okay.
Yeah, simplified interface for a MOBA. So, better for beginners, for people trying to jump into that genre. Sounded like, yeah, and it's like a gateway. If you enjoy this, you'll probably want to jump into other ones as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see when we try it out on the group stream. By the time you're watching this on Wednesday, we probably have already, if you're not a patron who gets early access, $5 and up, let us know in the comments if we I think we're going to enjoy it. I think it's going to be a fun time. But if we hated it, be sure to let us know, like, hey, you made the right call skipping out. I'm more weirded out by this live-action Pokemon Netflix thing, though, to be honest.
Sure.
Because we did get Detective Pikachu, but I would always think like they'd just make like a new animated series because that's what they always do. So Netflix and live action to me has been left me very skeptical. Like The Witcher, I enjoyed The Witcher, but man, something like Pokemon, I don't know if you could do that without a budget.
Yeah, Pokemon's gonna be weird. Those Pokemon gotta look pretty decent, especially after the movie, like you said.
Yeah, are they going to look like the movie versions, or are they going to go with a different style? Like, these are the questions I think people are going to be asking. Sorry, I haven't been following that story at all in terms of if they actually gave those details. I just saw the headline. Just like, wow, Pokemon. Man, Netflix is Netflix just going to have every video game adaptation ever at some point?
It sure seems like it. That's like the meta right now, is everyone's doing that. Anime or live action, everything, video games.
I was like, what are
like the new
some
superheroes?
Yeah, what are some like really low tier series that like eventually when they're like scraping the bottom of the barrel that we're gonna see like in 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, man, like some terrible RPG game. I don't know.
I want the they're gonna make a PUBG live action
PUBG.
series.
I think there is. Yeah, I honestly think
Netflix.
there's like something with PUBG coming.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
I don't know. Not saying that I'm
weird.
not talking down on PUBG. I'm just saying like it feels like that could be like any military action movie.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Whereas like something
it just
like
seems kind of weird.
Yeah,
premise.
like something like a Fortnite would be like more like a Pixar style film. I would feel like good CG animation and maybe a lot of crossover stuff. It'd be like the Ready Player One of CG movies, even though that movie was already kind of CG.
Dude, we need a Metal Gear Rising specifically live action show.
Oh my gosh! I know what I want, like Quentin Tarantino to direct it.
Yeah, dude, it's so funny.
Like all the cameos that would be in it. Yeah.
Hugh Jackman as Raiden.
Hugh Jackman as Raiden.
It's like, and he keeps the Aussie accent, dude, the whole time.
Oh man, yeah, we could talk about speculating about Netflix video game adaptations forever, but Skyward Sword HD just arriving, and I got some patron questions. There's potentially a lot to talk about. I'll be upfront. I know you haven't finished it. You've only been playing on stream. I haven't finished it either. I finished the original. Like
Yeah, we when it came out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I just haven't. I'm in the middle of Lanairu Mines right now, dungeon. That's where I'm at.
That's like kind of where I'm at too.
Yeah, so I think we're about at the same place, but I feel like I've played enough to speak to some of the issues, or maybe the improvements that they've made over the original. So we'll see. But got some patron questions here, and let's start with you know what? Let's start with Level Capybara's question.
Okay.
Skyward Sword may be a tougher sell to some people than Breath of the Wild, but it's been a joy to hear so much discussion lately about how much the former paved the way for the latter, with stamina, shield durability, beacons. Looking ahead to the Breath of the Wild sequel, are there any other elements of Skyward Sword you'd like to see implemented in Breath of the Wild 2? Because that trailer makes me think that it's definitely taking inspiration.
Yeah, definitely. Or some sort of connection,
Because this game, to maybe put better in context for you, Brad, I feel like this game, Skyward Sword, is labeled as the antithesis of Breath of the Wild. Yet, they share the same director, Fujibayashi, and as Level Capybara pointed out, it did lay the foundation for some of the core mechanics seen in Breath of the Wild. Is there anything else? Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to see maybe from from Skyward Sword show up in Breath of the Wild sequel, or maybe not? Maybe you're good.
So I kind of like the idea of the shop and upgrading your materials. Like, I know they kind of do that in Breath of the Wild a little bit with like the fairy fountains, but I was really into the idea of going to the bazaar and seeing all like the people there and actually going to the guy, upgrading the thing. Like, maybe you could upgrade, like, a lot of people, there's the two camps, the durability and the non-durability camp for Breath of the Wild. I'm personally okay with either, I guess. Maybe they could go somewhere in the middle where you could repair some things, but it's just kind of a pain in the ass, I guess. Kind of like how the Master Sword would repair itself in Breath of the Wild over time, but maybe an item you can get to repair some things. And I also think, obviously, the number one... Oh, two things. So obviously, the thing me really want is the dungeons. I've really enjoyed the two dungeons so far in Skyward Sword, they're design-wise, especially the one where you're running on like the ball throughout the lava. Yeah. I really like that. That was a lot of fun, so I hope they get kind of crazy with stuff like that. And a personal one I want is some sort of villain throughout the series with a presence, like Girahim has been. I think that would help invest people a lot in the story. Because it felt like the story was kind of divided into 4 sections with Breath of the Wild. And yes, they kind of related to Ganon in some way, but it was like the Ganon blights and Ganon kind of going off as doing things. Someone who's like actually there speaking to you with a threatening presence, I think is really important.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, that's always been kind of like a staple of Zelda games, is that you do have like this antagonistic force. It's either in your face and dangled in front of you, kind of like it is in... I mean, I think Skyward Sword, as you said, did a good job with Girahim. Twilight Princess was Zant, having him show up all the time. But then you have, like, Breath of the Wild, where it's just more ambiguous. Like, there's this, like, oh yeah, they're the Blights, they're the bosses, but it's just a specter hanging over Hyrule Castle. You don't really confront them over the course of the game. There isn't, like, a development of the character, as you said, which is a pretty good point. I also agree with you about like dungeons and stuff. Like, we definitely got a question about dungeons, so we can talk more about that for sure. And Skyward Sword is definitely reminding me, this replay is reminding me how much I like dungeons.
Yeah.
I will say, I'll keep this short because I want to talk about some other stuff. This question made me think about. I don't want to spend too much time on this. The quest system about... it's kind of like Majora's Mask-esque, where you make people happy. I don't know if you found that monster, but like the little star bit things. I like that, and I feel like that could really benefit a sequel. Is that on your own, if you go out and meet NPCs and you help them out, you get this currency, and it can be used to unlock some cool stuff. But just something to tie in and a little bit more, because there's a little bit more of a narrative backbone to that, with this monster who wants to become a human, and then you get to know more of the characters and Skyloft a little bit better, and their ins and outs. So I'd like to see more of that, honestly.
I kind of like having items again, not just on my Sheikah slate. Like, I love the Sheikah slate, don't get me wrong, but I kind of miss the traditional items being around a little bit. Hopefully, like, maybe if you get a couple, like, a grappling hook would be super sick, or a hook shot in the sequel if they did something like that. That could make traversal really fun. Or the whip is really cool. So I'm hoping to see, like, a few things that maybe just help you with traversal and combat.
Yeah.
Like, I even love the little claws you use to dig. You know, you just do them at certain spots, but I just kind of like that.
Yeah. They definitely. It's funny because you point out the items. Like, I definitely missed them. It's also interesting because Level Copy Bar was talking about how Skyward Sword gave some elements to Breath of the Wild, but this Skyward Sword clearly takes a lot of inspiration from one of Fujibayashi's earlier works, The Minish Cap, because the gust bellows and the mole mitts were essentially in a different form, or in them. Yeah, you could. Yeah,
I want those guys back. I want them back. I love those guys.
So let me ask you this. I do feel like we did jump a little bit ahead by, like, saying about what we wanted to see in the sequel, but I mean, we talked about things we liked. So let me get to, like, the more broader question here. How do you think Skyward Sword holds up? How did, like, the HD effort and the changes, you could factor that in as well, but it's been 10 years since the game came out. And, have your opinions changed? And, how do you feel about
So right now, I think where I'm at in the game, it's kind of remained the same. I actually, in my second stream when I started playing it, I liked my first stream. I had more problems with the motion controls, where I was getting a little more frustrated. But then I kind of found a sweet spot. I don't know what it is. I just found it to make them work better for me, so it's been less frustrating, I guess. But in terms of overall scope, I kind of feel the same right now, because I like the idea of their levels, like how they're smaller. They're very small scale, and they're very kind of cramped, I would say, which I kind of like and I don't like. You lose a lot of feeling of exploration, but I like that they kind of feel like a mini dungeon. So I don't know. Right now, I kind of feel the same. I'm very curious to see how I feel about the story at the end, Damiani, because I know that's one part you're not a fan of. But right now, I kind of feel the same. Obviously, the game, to me, looks way better. Like, playing in 60 frames is great. I always thought Skyward Sword was a bad-looking Wii game on a HD or an HD TV, so to me, it looks much better this time around. Like, I thought it was real ugly before. But so far, I'm pretty pleased.
It's funny about the visuals, Brad. Start there. Because I was kind of, like, railing on this HD games, like, from the trailers. I thought it just, for whatever reason, like, from an aesthetic point of view, I thought it was, like, looked kind of worse, actually. Especially if you played, like, an old CRT for the original one. If you managed to luck out and play it that way, I feel like it looked a little bit more...
Yeah, definitely.
It realized that, like, kind of the
Dark style?
Yeah, sorry. Man, why am I forgetting the word? Like the pastel look, the like watercolor, like look, nature, the painted look.
Yeah.
And playing it seeing it and seeing it on, like, an actual screen, it does look better than the trailers. I'll give it that. Like, it's not as offensive, I would put it that way. Like the Wind Waker HD also bugged me with some of the lighting choices they did, but that part, like, I'm actually okay with that so far. That hasn't been bugging me as much as I thought, and I'm with you. It is interesting because, like, I'm finding myself liking it at times, and there's less times that I'm getting, like, annoyed with it, because when I played through the original, I felt myself being a little bit more let down overall from, like, each progressing through the game. Whereas I only felt that disappointment, Brad, at the beginning. When you first go down to the surface, when you go to Farron Woods, finding those, like, Ewoks, the penguin Ewoks, and the dowsing, that part I really disliked originally. I still dislike that part from a pacing perspective. But when I got sent to Eldin, I kind of, and in Lanayru Mines after, I like those segments a little bit more, because they do feel more like a dungeon. It feels like a continuous dungeon, and then you get into the dungeons proper, and as we said earlier, it's reminding me of how much I miss traditional Zelda dungeons. So I'm finding myself enjoying it a little bit more and more as I progress through it. I will say though, it feels a little overbearing because it feels like nonstop dungeon style.
Yeah, it is.
and it's like I'd like to have some moments just to like freely explore, and I do
Yeah.
feel that bit of suffocation because it is just while they're large environments, it's still not Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
I'm still
So
not
I
able
think
to just
that-
run around.
I think they wanted that exploration feeling from flying, you know? But as we've talked about, there's not a ton to do up there. Mm-hmm. It feels a little barren at times. Like, I wish there's more up in the sky to do, or like more reason to go up there besides Skyloft and stuff. Like, I love the pumpkin bar or whatever it's called. I think that's really jolly. Could have used like 3 or 4 more places kind of like that in the sky.
Yeah, that part of me hasn't changed. To me, the sky, while it has some charm and novelty, it's just so disappointing.
Yeah.
It's like the worst world map environment
Overworld
of
kinda
the 3D
thing, yeah.
Zelda game. Yeah, overworld. It's even worse to me than the original Wind Waker's ocean. It's just so sparse and empty, and unfortunately, as you said, would definitely benefit from a few more points of interest to do more meaningful content up there. And ultimately, it becomes kind of a chore to fly back and forth at times. It's
Sure,
like,
yeah.
it's fun to fly the first few times. It's like I just want to get back. There's nothing really to do, and yeah, that still to me is, from what I've played so far, is still the most disappointing part of Skyward Sword
Got
right
it.
now.
Yeah. I do like Skyloft itself,
Yeah,
and I like the idea of having a hub. It's kind of comfy, I guess. I just like hubs, I think. But yeah, I totally see where you're coming from in that sense.
yeah. I found myself appreciating Skyloft a little bit more. I spent my time going through everyone's, like, exploring their houses, like just exploring that. It's not that big, but it does have a good amount of personality for it.
Yeah.
I think they found the correct balance that they were trying. They start with like Ocarina of Time, where they were making all these like areas for like, I mean, Hyrule Castle Town wasn't that great, but I mean, for first time I was like, oh, cool.
For
but
back
like,
then too.
yeah, but looking back in and like now, modern day, it's like, it's kind of okay. And then in Twilight Princess, Orden Village was like, it was cool at first, but man, that's such a slog. Skyloft to me was like the happy medium, and with the new changes, they kind of sped it up a little bit, which is I appreciate that.
Yeah, totally.
Speaking of new changes, though, I mean, are you even noticing what what the changes are that and the ones you have, are you appreciating them? Are they improving your experience at all?
So from like a pacing perspective, we were talking about, like, I don't remember a ton of it, because I mean, I haven't beaten this game fully since 2011 when it came out, so I'm not gonna pick up on a lot of that kind of stuff. But like, obviously the 60 FPS is a huge change for me, and the second control, like the camera control now, proper camera control. Because you couldn't really do it as well. Like, it's just real nice, man.
Yeah, not having Fi bug you every time you pick up the same item.
That's right. I totally forget about that a lot.
That's probably the biggest one for me. Is just like, I mean, but it's so obvious. It should never existed. And in fact, I played on I had a modified Wii, so like I just installed I installed like a mod or whatever that that
got rid of it.
Got rid of that stuff eventually, but it's just just like small stuff like that is really nice. And as you said, like having more traditional camera controls is really nice, especially when you're playing with motion controls. Just having the right analog, because swinging is to swing the Joy-Con, but right analog freely moves the camera, which is it's nice. But that's something I kind of want to talk about the new changes, is because one of the biggest new changes is this game can be played without motion controls. And have you tried playing it without motion controls?
I tried a little bit of
Okay.
it, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I prefer the motion controls big time, but I appreciate that it's there and it's doable to be able to play that game without it.
I'm mostly of the same sentiment as you, Brad. It is definitely serviceable. It works. And it's nice that they came up with that solution, so even people with a Switch Lite don't have to go with a weird setup with Joy-Cons. It definitely reemphasizes to me that this game was meant to be played with motion controls, despite their best efforts here. And also, there's just one too many inputs usually to do the same thing that would take for motion controls. And they also, like, I'm frequently, when I'm playing with the traditional control setup, early on I was frequently hitting the right analog stick to move the camera, but if you don't hold down the left bumper, the L button, it does that's not how it works. It just draws your sword. I'm like, I keep drawing my sword. And then like running like the run and sprint and then roll. It's like hold B, then push an L3. It's like when it's just a shake on like the left. It's just not intuitive enough for me in some points, and it leads to frustrations. It's nothing that's game breaking or even really that big of a bump in the road, but it is noticeable and it definitely is off-putting at times.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Like the spin attack, I remember maybe it was kind of weird.
Yeah, you gotta go left, right, left, and the weirdest one for me is the fatal stab. It's like you have to like flick up and down on the right analog, like, and it's like that's. Oh, it's like, oh man!
Like, and at that point, you should just let me just push like A or something for some things.
Exactly, that's the thing. I'm going to, especially with the pedigree of the series, with so many 3D entries, they kind of all they mostly control the same. So muscle memory is taking over, and I'm trying to play it traditionally, and those aren't the same commands anymore. It's a unique set of commands. You kind of have to almost relearn to play the game. And again, as I said, it's just unintuitive, because motion controls feel natural to what the game's trying to get you to do. But you did say, you mentioned, I'm curious, you found like the motion controls, sometimes you had some issue with them, or
like I was having trouble like readjusting, because I'm playing when I'm streaming, so I'd have my mic kind of in the way a lot, and I found I'm like, man, I need a little more space. So I was kind of moving around a lot and like going far back like this, but then the last time I did it, I was just like finding sweet spots for me, like holding my hand, like I was thinking about more where my hand was when I was recalibrating it, then it would just be smoother for me. So it was just taking some mental checks from me.
Okay, that makes perfect sense, because for me, the thing that felt the best with motion controls is tossing and rolling bombs compared to on the controller.
Bombs in this
like
game.
It feels so good with the motion controls,
so fun.
Whereas with the standard thing, especially like putting spin on it, it's so frustrating to do it on the traditional inputs. And especially in like the boss fight in the second dungeon, it's way more frustrating to do that with the traditional controls, because the extra input step that usually it takes. Whereas with the motion controls, went back and like I fought a little bit for that, paused, switched over to motion controls. I'm like, oh my! I was like, okay, because I remember the original time I played it, it was one of my favorite fights, and I had a blast with it, and I loved the bowling animation I was doing a lot. And this time with the normal controllers, like, this feels not as good as I remember. And then when I switched to motion controls, like, there it is.
There we go. Yeah,
what about like steering and like flight, like using traditional versus
it's been okay. Like, so, I guess when I first started flying with when I was first playing, the game like didn't tell me about the flap. I don't know if it even tells you about that. And I was like, dude, this sucks. Why is my Joy-Con like freaking out? I'm like, I'm having so much trouble. And someone in the chat was like, oh, you got to flap. And I was like, what? It like didn't even tell me that. And once I learned about the flap, smooth sailing the rest of the time.
Brad, can I quickly indulge you with an anecdote?
Yes.
One of the first times I played Skyward Sword, played Skyward Sword at E3 before it came out, but then they had it at San Diego Comic-Con. Now, obviously, when they had it at E3, they had 3 demos. They had the dungeon demo, the Girahim battle, and like flying around in the Loftwing. I went for the battle and dungeon stuff because that was the most important looking gameplay when I was for my session. I didn't fly around as the Loftwing. I didn't have time for that. Come Comic-Con a few weeks later, get all the time in the world to play Skyward Sword, and I try out the Loftwing. Same damn thing, Brad. I was trying to fly around, like the attendant didn't explain to me about flapping, so I kept like losing altitude. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I was like, is this gonna be patched where you're gonna add like more like dashes or something like this, like the speed boost? Because this is so hard to go up and maintain, and then like they didn't say anything, and then like I stepped back in line and I looked at other people playing, like they're shaking it. I'm like, okay. Went back in. I was like, oh my! I was like, please just tell people you got a flap. I was like,
I know, man.
Because I was walking away. I literally told the attendant, I was like, this mode kind of sucks. I was like,
Man,
this
that's
is not
funny.
good. It kind of sucks. I'm sorry.
Man,
was
I don't know if I've ever told anyone something sucks, even if
to a
it does.
Nintendo
That's
person,
so
I was just
awesome.
like, yeah. And then I was like, that would have been your chance to be like, oh, did you know you could flap? I'm like, oh no, I didn't. Because you know how they're like
Yeah.
always like sometimes always back at old E, like with the days of when we went to E3 in person. You know, attendants sometimes are a little overbearing and they're trying to like guide you how to play, and you're like, nah, just let me play the
Yeah.
game. This is one time where it was like, this is your moment to shine.
Yeah, they're just kind of standing around.
So the dungeons. Logan says, "Hey Brad and Damiani, if you're willing, I'd love to know your thoughts on each of the dungeons you've played so far. I've seen some say they're the best collection of dungeons in the series. Personally, while I really like ones like the Sand Ship, which is later on with the
Yes.
skeleton pirate fight, I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Lanairu mining facility, which we're on. I also think there are some really weak ones like Skyview Temple and Fire Sanctuary. Would love to know
Those
your
the first
thoughts."
two?
So I believe Skyview is the first one. Earth is the second one. I believe, unless they called it wrong. Let me just Google
I'm
this
trying
real
to
quick.
remember how many dungeons are in this game. Like, what, 6?
Because you go back to each area
Yeah,
like
so
three
probably
times.
6?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah, I don't remember how many there was.
the Fire Sanctuary, sorry, is the sixth dungeon. So
Okay.
that's when you go back, I believe, the third time? It's
Third
either second
time?
or third time you go back to Eldon.
Yeah.
And then,
okay.
Skyview, I believe, is the
I don't
first
remember it. I don't remember that dungeon, like, at all. Like, I remember the water one where you get the whip.
Yeah, the ancient...
The boat, obviously.
Ancient cistern or whatever. That one was the one that I remember being one of the better ones, because that boss fight, that's like Kalaktos.
Yeah,
That's the one
yeah.
that people love
Yeah,
to
that fight
always
was
point
sick,
out
dude.
as, yeah.
But yeah, I can't remember the dungeon.
So there's Skyview is the first one, Earth is second, Lanairu is third, that's where you are. Ancient Cistern, the water one's the fourth, Sand Ship is fifth, Fire Sanctuary is sixth, and then seventh is a spoiler.
Spoiler, yeah.
Yeah, but there
I
are
guess.
there are 7 dungeons proper,
Okay.
and then there are 3 mini dungeons in the game.
Okay.
But yeah, like Ancient Cistern to me was one of the strongest ones from what I remember. Lanairu is pretty cool. I'll talk about that because of like the time stones, and you also get the gust bellows, so like you're blowing away like the sand. Like that's such
Sand,
a cool
That's
thing.
very satisfying.
Oh yeah, and you were
Yeah.
talking about like rolling around in Earth Temple on the ball, but like figuring out how to get over there. You know, like I
Yeah.
like that. Like part of the puzzle is that you think maybe go over here and then like just go over to a wall, like it's across a bunch of lava. It's like this is a plain wall. Oh, I could maybe is that cracks? Zelda and
Yeah,
walls
I
and
could
cracks. What does
bust
that
it.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah,
like,
and I like
ahead.
the I always forget their names, the lizard guys. I
Just
think
those
they're really
Zaphos?
cool in this game. Yeah, you fight them in the second dungeon. I really like them in this game. You know, where you swing at them and they kind of mock you and they leave a spot open.
the taunting. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. I think the second dungeon is not the most like crazy or ambitious dungeon, but I just think it's a really solid one. Kind of like the first one. Like they're not like super nuts. They're pretty chill, but I think they're super fun still.
For me, Skyview Temple was kind of it's an okay opening dungeon because like it gives you enough. It like makes you aware of like you need to look everywhere. Like the very first puzzle, like finding the first 2 like pink diamond switches. Like the one it says one's high, one's low, and like the one low is like in the first area. It's like kind of easy to miss, so people might be like. But also like the fighting the skulltulas. It's like.
Yeah,
Wait,
I love that.
You gotta spin them, then you gotta like just the way a lot of
Love
the
that
design
fight.
complements the combat and your combat mechanics, like shield bashing to parry. As you said, like
Yep.
the Zaphos, it's like you could like not only can you like parry stuff, but like swinging your sword the correct direction to counter. Like especially like in Lanairu when you start getting to the things that what Poe fight in Force Awakens, the anti-lightsaber weapons. It's like
Oh,
they're
yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
the all of a sudden the
Yeah,
bokoblins are using that stuff. It's
Yeah,
like,
that is cool. Yeah, I guess like when we say dungeons, maybe some people think about we just talk about the layout of the dungeon itself and like mechanics of going through the dungeon and solving stuff, but I think the enemies play a big role in them also. And I think I like the spiders in it too. It just adds like I think because Skyward Sword kind of adds a little twist to every enemy and makes them somewhat not more engaging, but just you like think about these enemies different than you do in other Zelda games.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about like the spider, you gotta like do the spin attack to flip them over and stuff like that. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, Earth temples. It's because it's fire. You're in the
Mm-hmm.
volcano. Usually, at that point, you might only have a wooden shield. It's like this is gonna burn. You got to be careful
Yeah.
with this. And then in Lanayru, you got electric stuff. So if you upgrade to a metal shield, it's like, well, now your metal shield is gonna
Yeah, you
get
might
electric.
yeah.
But if you went back to the wood, you're like, I like that type of decision making. I like that. There's definitely like in Breath of the Wild, there's definitely elemental stuff. But I feel this game did it a little bit more. I don't know, like I don't want to say purposely, but it felt
Mm-hmm.
like it was more integral to like the design of like the dungeons because of their layout, and that's an element missing from Breath of the Wild that I would love to see. When I say
Right.
like I want dungeons to come back, it's like it's also stuff like this that we're talking about with
Mm-hmm.
like the enemy
Yeah.
makeups, the layouts, but also like as we talked about items, just the sheer variety of items that you can have
Yeah.
by tackling these dungeons. But in terms of like puzzle factor, how so far do you liking the puzzles? Too easy, just right? Anything
They're
that maybe
like
was a stumper?
simple in nature, but I've had to think about them. Like you're talking about the crack on the wall earlier.
Mm.
Like I didn't notice that for a little bit, so I definitely had to think still. There hasn't been like crazy aha moments, I would say, or I'm like, oh my god, like that's it kind of thing. I do this and this. They've been pretty like chill so far. Like, granted, I'm in this. I'm like beating the second dungeon, so they're pretty easy right now. But they're simple but fun still.
Yeah. I'll say the only kind of letdown for me now, looking at reminding myself of the rest of the dungeons in this, they definitely, because it's also the three areas below. It's either like forest, woodland forest themed, fire, or like desert sandy themed. I mean, Ancient
Yeah,
Sister does
for the
water,
rest.
but like it's still like a golden brown colored dungeon, and it kind of like fits in that. To me, Skyward Sword, like its composition in terms of puzzles, layout, and enemies, definitely make these dungeons pretty strong to me. But they still don't have the personality and atmosphere of some of my favorite dungeons, which still belong to Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. Like,
Right? Yeah.
I'm just, yeah, like,
Well, we think of the mansion
Yeah.
from Twilight Princess like every time. It's like Snow Peak.
until
mansion,
you,
or whatever it's
until you give
called.
me something like that, it's just,
Like even Arbiter Grounds and stuff from Twilight Princess, like you're right. Everything's like Goron Mines. It's all super atmospheric. Feels like really built around this area you're in. Like it kind of makes sense, like why it would be there, I guess.
yeah.
And like Temple of Time, dude. Like just the idea that the Temple of Time's a
Yeah.
dungeon, is super rad.
For sure. So, I mean, yeah, good dungeons, but I guess
Good bosses so far, so I think that helps the dungeons too.
totally forgetting to talk about like the bosses here. I mean, like kind of first one you get Girahim, but like I'm gonna say this, Brad. Back in the day when this first came out, Girahim at especially E3 2011, wherever 2010, whichever was the E3 that they had Girahim fight present. Girahim was kicking everyone's ass.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah,
could
for
like
sure.
everyone was getting wrecked by Girahim. It was hilarious
Yeah.
to watch. He was grabbing their sword, taking it away. He was taunting people, and everyone's like, I remember everyone writing at the time like, "Wow, it's a Zelda boss that actually fights back and is challenging." And it's like, oh man, okay. I
Yeah.
mean, it's definitely for a first time encounter. If you've never seen something that's great, but yeah, excuse me, like the Earth Temple's boss, you know, with the rolling the bomb stuff, but like it frantically chases you. Like I
Yeah, it's
love
good.
that. It feels like you're gonna get caught. It's like, oh no, please leave me alone.
Yeah. Makes good use of the bombs. Like I really like that fight. It's really cool.
And it's like you're chipping away at its armor, which is definitely a trope of Zelda bosses for the
Yeah.
longest time. So they do such a good job with these bosses, and just remembering the ones that come ahead, like we said, like Kalaktos is like usually the one everyone points to as like the pinnacle of bosses in this game, if not like one of the best in the Zelda series. But maybe speaking of that, I'm kind of curious. With obviously, your opinion might change by the time you finish because you're still only been the first third
Pretty
of the
early,
game.
yeah.
We both are in the HD version. I mean, has anything you played, has it changed where you feel like this game ranks amongst, the 3D entries, or this is like in the series? Has that been swayed yet, or do you see yourself maybe changing on
I
that
don't think
stance
it's
at all?
been swayed yet. I have a hard enough time just figuring out my favorite Zeldas, period. Like, they're always just moving around in my head. Like, I love all, like, I really like all the 3D Zeldas, and just finding, like, I think Ocarina is always going to be one of the tops for me, but a lot of the other ones I could just kind of see moving around. But so far, nothing has changed yet.
I saw I forget who it was on social media. I can look up in a sec, but they were making every year they would go back and re-rank the Zelda games because they replay them every year, and they wanted to see track how they change their opinions every year, which I thought was kind of a cool idea because I feel like
cool.
Zelda top 10 lists or top 5 or even personal top Zelda games are constantly evolving. I feel like with each new release and every few years, opinions change on this. So I'm kind of with you, Brad, which is it's trending upward. I'll say that, but it did have a long way to go in my book to trend high enough to surpass where it is. And unfortunately, for those who are big Skyward Sword fans, Skyward Sword for me is at the bottom rung of the 3D Zelda games for me.
Right.
It's right below the Wind Waker for me. I put Wind Waker right above it, and then I always put Twilight, Majora, and Ocarina above those three. Though I will say I need to replay Twilight Princess because it might not hold up as well with the time, especially the aesthetic, but it'll never come close. Like, I'll just be real. Skyward Sword was never going to close to me for Ocarina and Majora. So it's always the Wind Waker and Skyward Sword vying for like last place, but the Wind Waker has like grown on me over time for sure, and the HD version definitely helped iron out some of the problems I had with it. Not all, but some.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll have to see. It's still got 2/3 of the game to go, but that story we don't really need to get into the story too much because it'll get into spoiler territory. This is not a spoiler mode. We haven't finished the game. But I was extremely disappointed, and one of my biggest gripes with Skyward Sword originally was the finale of this game. And its ultimate resolution was just very let down. And from its own game's own logic, it felt like it broke its own rules. And I felt kind of betrayed in that regard. I was like, it like diminished my journey. So the journey, the destination diminished the potency of the journey for me, and I was like, man, that sucks. So
left you with a sour taste.
I want to talk about the music real quick before we go any further with some like other types of speculation about maybe where we go from here. This comes from Garrett Hullfish. I'm replaying it now, Skyward Sword HD, and I have been surprised how much I loved it this time around. I totally forgot how good the music was, too. So, the music in this game, are you a big fan of the soundtrack for this game, Brad? Or
I've really enjoyed a lot of the music I've heard so far. Like, particularly, one of my favorite tracks is, I'm not sure what it's called, it's when you meet Zelda at the goddess statue early on in the game, and just, like, the music playing with her was, like, a real standout moment where I was like, damn, this game has good music. I really love this. Like, honestly, I've enjoyed every song so far that I've played through. Obviously, some are more intense, or more to captivate me more, but so far I've been like, yeah, this game has great music. I love it all.
Yeah. It's also reminding me how much I do, on a personal level, while I appreciate what Breath of the Wild did, I like music just being kind of there to set the atmosphere and just being present is a good way to put it. Like having dungeon themes, having overworld themes, each region having its own themes. Like, okay, I kind of missed this and I prefer this. So maybe at the very least, they strike a balance with Breath of the Wild sequel, because I'd love to hear music more frequently. Garrett also had one other complaint, though. Their main complaint that still stands is we get all these cool new races on the surface, but they don't get any character development and instead just point you in the right direction like a signpost.
Yeah, I agree. I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like the races were involved in more stuff in the previous games, especially Ocarina and stuff like that. I mean, even Twilight Princess, they're kind of involved more too. Like they're more part of the story. It feels like.
Yeah, like the Gorons, like the whole sumo match and like proving yourself, and then the
and the
Zora
Zoras,
with the
like the prince,
yeah,
and
it's
his
like
mom.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, they're all just kind of like, "Hey, dude, what's up? Thanks for helping," kind of thing.
Yeah, wish that's something I think they could try to improve on, but Skyward Sword HD, it's now actually left Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD a little bit behind. So we got those two on Wii U.
Yeah,
but they're not 1080 60.
60. They're not.
They don't have the 60
which
frames.
is annoying.
So my question to you, Brad, is they denied it. They said that Skyward Sword is the only thing, and the Game and Watch is the only. The
Zelda things.
Zelda Game Watch is the Game and Watch is the only thing they have planned for the 35th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. No other re-releases, remasters. But one, do you still think Twilight Princess HD and the Wind Waker HD are still in the cards? And yeah,
I think they have a chance coming. I don't know about this year or anything like I don't know if they'd count it in the year, whatever 35th anniversary for Zelda. I don't know if it'll fit in there, but I think it's still in the cards. I mean, I think about all the Wii U games that showed up on Switch already, so I don't see why not can't show up. I don't know if they'll necessarily do anything different for them, though.
That's my follow-up question is, is there anything else that you think they could further alter in those two games?
I mean, I think they should make those games 60 FPS if they can, obviously, because they're not. And, clean up some textures if they could. You know what I really liked on my honest with Wind Waker is I like the way Wind Waker looks, but I wish there was you could switch between like the two styles of it because they look different. You know what I mean? Like switch between bloop, 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 flip, like kind of like Halo did.
Halo, man.
Like
Halo,
I like the new one.
Yeah, Master Chief Collection, man. Just
I could go for the original look too.
I love that about it. It's almost something I wish, like, I forget if I talked about with you or who I talked about, like Link's Awakening for Switch. They had some feature like that where it could just like toggle.
That'd be
to
great,
like,
yeah,
like stuff like that is so cool. But I understand,
especially because it's like if it's
hard.
1-to-1 kind of thing.
Yeah, if it's more 1-to-1 for sure. Like you're saying with Twilight Princess and Wind Waker.
I could see them getting away with Damiani if they don't change those two HD versions at all. Is if they put them both on the same thing. If it's like one cart for both games.
Like like a double pack type thing.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem optimistic to look at that because of how Nintendo's been operating.
Correct.
Like it's more likely they'll do that. There is something I would be interested in them addressing though, because I don't they'd have to rework it. The Wind Waker HD had the message in the bottle system. So that with Miiverse and that's gone now. But I don't think that functionality needs to go necessarily because with Splatoon 2, they did make their own in-game kind of like social like communication system to replace Miiverse. So I would really hope they would do something like that for Wind Waker HD. They brought that to Switch to keep that functionality there because that would kind of be a bummer. Also help people with the pictograph stuff, getting the statues. If you missed hard to get shots, it was a way for people to, hey, you missed this Ganondorf shot. Here you go, everybody. Check out this, try and find this bottle. But I don't know if there's anything else that's like within the realm of plausibility because they aren't gonna redo
like 60 FPS for both is like what I would hope the best for. That's like maybe, but who knows?
How do you feel about the game the Skyward Sword HD being the price it is? Like what like we know it's Nintendo being Nintendo, but is this something you think they should? If you had your way, do you think it should be charged like at a lower price point?
If I had my way, like I would ideally it would be lower price point. For me, it's hard to gauge because I'm a huge Zelda fan, and I'd buy this regardless. But for someone who's not, I could see 60 being kind of steep. And it's like, yes, I know all the other Nintendo games that got ported are $60. Like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, like I would pay $60 because I think that game's fucking incredible. But not everyone shares that, and I think that keeps some people out. But like honestly, I would hope these would be like, I think $40 would be great for these games at least or something. It seems like at least with this they put in some effort with like redoing the controls and stuff and a few quality of life things. But yeah,
This
$60 I could see being steep for people.
Yeah. This feels like the most comprehensive effort, and because maybe not in terms of an HD rework, but in terms of this reworking the control scheme, that probably was one of the most intense processes, especially after it came out from that former Retro staff about the Metroid Prime trilogy coming to Switch, about how Metroid Prime 3's motion controls would take, significant reworking. So while it's definitely doable, we've now been shown it's doable. It's just can't be so dismissive about how easy of an effort or how
of course.
Anyone calls this low effort, you probably should at least consider the work that went into remapping the control scheme. Like that's, despite its flaws, it's still impressive.
If you're curious about seeing like a lot of the nitty gritty of this version, there's a sweet Digital Foundry video actually where they kind of like dissect a lot of it and they go in depth with all the new stuff. If you're curious.
Yeah, their stuff is really, really good. If you want that technical breakdown of this. You got one more question from Undercover Sheikah here. Hi, Brad and Damiani. We answered a little bit of this, but it's just if there's anything else. Did you play through Skyward Sword? Did playing through Skyward Sword make you miss any traditional Zelda elements Breath of the Wild removed? Personally, it made me miss traditional dungeons and acquiring new items throughout the game instead of being handed all of them at the beginning. Do you want Nintendo to bring back traditional Zelda elements for the Breath of the Wild sequel? And which ones do you want to see return? Love and respect, Sam.
So I did like, obviously the dungeons we talked about. I also talked about kind of having like Girahim as a presence that you see throughout the game. One thing I kind of miss, like, she's not even the greatest example of this, is just having like a side character kind of with you a lot. Because Link obviously doesn't really speak. So there'd be like, these characters could be some way of communicating more. Like we had the King of Red Lions. We had Midna. We've had the two fairies. I kind of miss having a companion character with Link a lot of these. But, I mean, I totally understand why they didn't do it with Breath of the Wild, because it's all about being out there by yourself and kind of isolated a lot of times. But I kind of do miss having that vibe around.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. I mean, I took it for granted in Breath of the Wild because you said they're going for a more isolationist approach. But obviously the second one, even if it's an even larger open world, I mean, they might opt to still go for that. But I think having that vibe of someone with you, because it helps the narrative focus, I feel. As long as they're not like too overbearing, it keeps moving things along at a decent pace. Something that Breath of the Wild, in my opinion, could have used from a narrative perspective, because the amnesia storyline and having to like find your memories was like left up to your own devices and timing. So you could have got it all in a big chunk near the end if you just kept exploring for most of your game, and then if not, we could have skipped a lot of it if you just like beelined it for Ganon to fight Ganon. It was, it's a trade-off there, but I would like to see maybe them, slide a little bit back towards that direction. So I'm kind of with you there, Brad.
Yeah. Oh, I really want to swim underwater in Breath of the Wild. Like, I want to see what's going on down there. There's so much ocean and everything like that. Like, it doesn't even have to be huge. Like, it doesn't even have to be huge ocean. It could just be like how there was the Great Bay. There was just that one section of the game where you could go underwater. Even something like that, I think, would be really cool. Like, man, the Zora suits are always fun to swim around with. Always.
Some people might debate the Zora controls, the fun. I mean, it's fun.
Love the Zora.
It's fun.
Like, I even just like swimming around in the Zora suit in Twilight Princess. I just like it. It's like not crazy fast or anything, but it's just nice going underwater.
I think you make
especially if they add like a new race, or like, we know like so much stuff from past Zelda games is in Breath of the Wild. Like in that Hyrule, like there could be stuff underwater from past games. Just opens up more opportunities.
Think about this, Brad. Giant sky world. Obviously, the Hyrule surface, underground, and underwater. 4 open world environments to explore.
Dude, I'd love that. I would love that.
Hey, maybe that not everyone. A lot of people like to kind of knock underwater gameplay in general. People just think it can't be done very well, with some exceptions, especially in this type of game, like a game like Breath of the Wild. Imagine Nintendo, they're taking so long because they're revolutionizing underwater gameplay. They got some crazy underwater gameplay hook that's as wild as climbing on anything. And that's going to be like, You're gonna love underwater gameplay.
Yeah. It's like I like the water temple in Twilight Princess a lot. I think that one's really cool. Like I even like the water temple despite how annoying some things are, but I like the idea of it. So I hope they don't shy away from water completely.
Yeah, me too. I kind of want to ask this question, but a speculative question, maybe as we get towards the end of this. And we talked a little bit about the beginning because I alluded to it, but man, as I'm playing through this game and seeing stuff, I can't help but think Breath of the Wild sequel is going to derive a lot from Skyward Sword.
Yeah,
thematically.
so
like, you see Link, or whoever it is, because we don't see their face, being sent up and down between, like, the surface and the sky. It's like, oh, the owl statues kind of do that for you. I was like, is like, there's a lot of tropes that are very similar here. And I got to a certain point, and I'm like, with the time stones, I'm like, man, it's going to be important. And there's a reason they're releasing Skyward Sword HD right now, aren't they? It's like,
sure, yeah.
I feel like this is purposeful. I feel like this is purposeful. So yeah, do you think that? Do you think that? And do you have any?
I think there's going to be some small things. Maybe not super huge, but it wouldn't surprise me. Like I don't know if necessarily if you're going to get a loft wing or anything like that, which would be awesome. But I think there might be some lore connections scattered throughout, especially because like Skyward Sword is the beginning, and Breath of the Wild 2, I guess, is the end so far of the timelines. So, and like the release, you know, at one part of me, it's like, well, it's one of the only 3D Zeldas to like you could remaster that they haven't done yet, kind of thing. Or the next logical one after Wind Waker and Twilight, then it'd be this.
And they did Ocarina of Majora for 3D, yeah, for 3DS.
Maybe some of the lore stuff will actually kind of go into this game, like maybe some stuff more from the end of Skyward Sword will show up here in this game.
Yeah, I mean, people speculate about time travel. There's some kind of time stuff. We already talked about time stones in Skyward Sword, so you know there's some time stuff. I don't want to get too detailed for people who are still avoiding spoilers, but there's a mechanism. There's definitely a mechanism in Skyward Sword that opens up possibilities to how the two, if they want to. I mean, so be it. I just my hope is if they're doing it, man, it better be like well thought out. Please don't make it like cheesy or terrible. Like that's
please
always
be good.
Yeah, please be good because enjoyed Breath of the Wild so much without needing any direct connections to older games. So if you're gonna go that route, you got to have a good payoff for that. So, but yeah, so you're gonna keep playing. You're gonna keep playing this through till the end.
Oh hell yeah!
Okay,
hell yeah, dude. I'm having a great time playing through right now.
Yeah. It's so interesting because man, I was so kind of negative and down on this game for the longest time. Like I coming into this episode when I was planning for this episode before I even jumped into Skyward Sword, I was like thinking of like attention grabbing titles, and I was straight up gonna call this episode with on the thumbnail "Skyward Sword still sucks" with a question mark. And in description,
get people to click.
Yeah, I get my description like I hated it, or like, but it's like, man, that's so like I don't want to be that dishonest because like I don't think it sucks. I mean, I don't know if I ever really thought it sucked, but it's like it's still a Zelda
you were
game.
disappointed though.
But yeah, I think my disappointment's been tempered a little bit so far. Now
we'll see how you feel at the end.
To be fair, there is a notorious part near the end that drove me insane, that almost led me to like ranting about this game, not story wise, like design decision that really rubbed me the wrong way, and like it felt so insulting to me as a player. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. That I want to see how that part goes down this time, a second time around. I'm very curious, but otherwise, yeah, I definitely am seeing how people love this game. Even people who only started with Breath of the Wild are coming in this like, hey, I still love this too. It's like, yeah, see, you can.
Yeah,
it's totally okay, and it's totally possible.
It's like the most different you could get for Breath of the Wild, I guess, in a Zelda game. So it's been fascinating playing these back to back, essentially.
Yeah, and it's it's been an experience, I will say that. But anything else you want to mention about Skyward Sword HD before? Have you used the amiibo? Did you did you get the amiibo to try it out?
I have the amiibo. I haven't used it yet. Like, it doesn't seem that important to me. I feel like there's enough statues pretty much, or that are pretty convenient, where I can just go up to the sky and like, I've never been like, oh man, I really need to come to the sky right now. I haven't run into an instance like that yet, but Who knows?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I still think, even if it's not utilized very often, I still think it's not a great business practice.
Oh yeah, I hate, dude. I hate that. I get really mad when they tie stuff behind amiibo. Like, I get it. It gives them value, which is cool. But like all the the Breath of the Wild stuff, like all the like the outfits being tied to them, really like bummed me out. I wish you could have earned those in the game some way instead of just putting like an amiibo on your controller, which sucks. Like, they could have done something cool with that, but it is what it is, I guess.
I will say, those of you out there who are playing this on the harder difficulty once you beat the game, I think that might be where that amiibo might come in handy.
The amiibo comes in
because I forget if it's no hearts or fewer hearts. So like even a small segment, you can just like you're about to die. Warp me out of here. Get me back. Yeah.
I think it's you don't find hearts anywhere. You have to have potions.
It's usually no hearts, and like enemies do like double damage or
more
something.
Damage. Yeah. Oh man, I wish you could. I wanted to play on that mode, but you have to unlock it first.
That is a bit of a bummer that it's not available from the get-go. That's a little bit of an oversight. I mean, they could patch that. I hope they do, but it doesn't seem likely because it's such a simple thing. They could have just flipped the switch on. I feel like.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is Skyward Sword HD initial kind of like impressions there.
Yeah.
I know Ben is doing the review for it, so if you're looking for kind of like the final thoughts or kind of more of a verdict, be on the lookout for that. That should be coming in the future here. But yeah, it's kind of nice just to play this at whatever. I'm playing this at such a slow pace, Brad.
Yeah, same, yeah.
Just like sometimes I play in like 15-20 minute chunks, like the next statue. It's like I got the new bird statue save. All right, I'm gonna go do some other stuff. It's pretty good.
Yeah, go at your own pace.
Yeah. Well, thank you to everyone who submitted questions for this episode of Friend Code. If you'd like to submit a question for consideration, you need to be a $5 and up patron. As a $5 and up patron, you're also part of our early access tier where you get episodes of some of our shows and our podcast earlier before they hit public, so thank you to all of you. We also have some shout outs for the month of July 2021. These are our biggest, highest Patreon tier. Shout outs to El Thanis, Greg the Dark Knight Kettering, Caleb Togi Crawford, Edsgar Soma Spider So What, Esdalkel, Nick Blue, and Dave McKilligan. Shout out. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Brad, for joining me today. Oh, yeah, my
pleasure.
And, and until next time, the very appropriate, may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.